fantastic that we have government here. We have Robert Jenrick, the Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury, and he is going to, I suppose, I hope, set out the position that the government is taking around the support that's required. He's responsible and leads on economic growth, productivity, infrastructure investment and regional growth, so is really in the right position to talk about the opportunities and I suppose the demand from the opportunities that are in this region. He's also had a successful business career before becoming an MP for Newark in 2014, so very well placed to actually speak in this session on the business opportunities. So, Minister.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for that kind introduction. Thank you to England's economic heartland for organising this and inviting me here today, and for all of you as well for coming along. It's an interesting setting, not one that I've been to better than beat some of the other venues that I go to representing the Treasury. And it is a fitting place for us to meet today and to have these conversations about the future, not just of your local economy, the regional one here in the centre of England, but also across the whole of the United Kingdom's economy. And what I'd like to leave you with today, if nothing else, is that we at the Treasury, the Chancellor and I, view what you're trying to achieve here not just as incredibly important for the communities that you live in, you work in, and in some cases you represent, but that this is a national, if not international, opportunity for the UK that we're determined to seize, which does have some challenges that we need your help with, and we need to help you to realise those opportunities, but we see it as a huge opportunity for the country, and we want to ensure not just that we take the right decisions, but that with your help we put in place the foundations, the governance and the long-term investments so that this can really be driven through for many governments to come. And we're conscious, as here today, gone tomorrow politicians, that this is a venture, a common endeavour that will take 20 or 30 years to realise its full potential. And our duty is to make sure that we take the long-term decisions that we can, and we put in place the structures that we will need to ensure that we can realise the full potential of this incredible opportunity. Now, this is an area which, because you live and work here, you don't need me to say how important it is, but it is worth dwelling for a moment on quite what a huge opportunity you have in your communities. Of course, at the far ends of this corridor, for want of a better term, and we hope we can come up with a sexier branding for it than we have so far. But at the far end, we've got Oxford and Cambridge, two of the world's greatest cities that we should feel hugely proud of, and which are, in different ways, powerhouses of global research and development, of life sciences, of entrepreneurship and technology. I lived in Cambridge for 3 years as a student some time ago, and it's been an amazing experience to return time and again to Cambridge and see that city develop from a relatively sleepy, if scientific and intellectual powerhouse back then, to the world-class centre of technology that it is today. We want to see that continue to thrive in the years ahead. Oxford, of course, exactly the same. And Milton Keynes and the many other communities that are represented here today have even more untapped economic potential than Oxford and Cambridge. We want to see all parts of this corridor realise their potential. You've already heard and will have read in the past from the National Infrastructure Commission the good work that they've done, and the Treasury will be responding to their report shortly. And we want to see in that response not just a technocratic document, but one which sets out a long-term vision, an economic vision for this area. But we saw the information that they put forward really setting the economic case for investment in this area, that with the right interventions, the economy could grow very substantially, that over 1 million homes could be built, that over 1 million new jobs could be created, and that £163 billion in additional economic output could be created. And it's that tremendous opportunity that we see as our duty to ensure that we fully realise. But we do think that to achieve that is not certain. We realise that there are a number of significant challenges that we have to overcome. And I want to talk very briefly about 3 of them today. One, of course, is connectivity. We know that this ARC has within it some of the UK's most exciting and vibrant communities, but it also has pretty poor historic connectivity between them. So it's rather like a football team with a great set of players, but which doesn't always work together to form a coherent whole. And we realise that we need to put in the investment into infrastructure to ensure that the team can work well together, and that businesses, many of which are represented here today, can have the confidence to invest knowing that their workforce can move between communities and the area can start to be as strong as the sum of its parts. The Chancellor has been very clear that he is willing to invest the money that's needed to achieve that goal. Across the whole of the United Kingdom, we want to increase substantially the amount of money we're spending on infrastructure over the course of this Parliament. We're investing, if we realise our ambitions, more than we will have spent in the public and private sector on infrastructure at any time in my lifetime, at any time, in fact, since the early 1970s. And in this area, of course, we've committed to 2 once-in-a-generation, game-changing investments. The first, the East-West Railway, which you will be very familiar with, and which is making good progress. Over the summer, we've now fully established the East-West Rail Company, and Network Rail have now completed the first stage of the consent process for the Bicester to Bedford phase of the line. There's more to be done on that, but Chris Grayling and his team at the Department for Transport are 100% committed to ensuring that that goes ahead on schedule. And of course, in addition to that, we also are committed to seeing one of the UK's most ambitious road projects conducted here as well. And today, we've announced the preferred corridor for the Oxford to Cambridge Expressway. Now, I appreciate that with all these decisions, there will be some people in this room who welcome that and some people who would have preferred another option. The work has been done, I think, exhaustively with the Department for Transport and Highways England. Careful thought has already been put into this. And on the basis of that work, they came to the conclusion that the best plan was for the road to follow as closely as is practical the new railway. Now, I recognise that no one corridor can link every community that wants to be on the expressway. But I'm grateful for England's economic heartland for the work that they've done, and they will, of course, be taking forward a study on how we can spread the connections from the wider expressway, from the expressway to the wider community. And in this way, we can help places that I know are represented here today, like Aylesbury, that are working hard to deliver the future of the corridor, to feel fully connected to it and to play their full part in its future. We've listened to the people who have rightly raised concerns about the potential implications for the local environment, and this is a tremendously beautiful part of the UK, with many areas that we would all in this room want to see protected. Based on the work that we've done to date, the Department for Transport have ruled out construction over the Otmore Nature Reserve, and there will be more important choices to be made in time to ensure that the route continues as far as we can to protect the natural environment. And we want to ensure that local people have their say, and so it's absolutely right that we now have the full consultation that the route requires. By 2030, we expect to see the new Oxford to Cambridge Expressway open to traffic. I wish it could be done sooner, but we will ensure it's delivered for that timetable, and the Treasury will use our influence in government to make this a national priority. This could save as much as 40 minutes in the journey between the M1 and the A34 south of Oxford. And along the way, it will relieve traffic, which we know is congesting the roads of Oxford and Milton Keynes. And of course, we're also committed to providing Milton Keynes with a new bypass. In the future, we hope that this expressway, allied with the new railway, will help to bridge the gaps between these communities, to enable people to commute from one to the other in a way which we can't even imagine today, to help smart people and great businesses in each of these towns and cities to work together as one coherent unit. Which brings us, of course, to the second challenge that we also want to work with you on, and where we need your help more than ever, and that is on housing. We know that this area has tremendous economic potential, and you've heard that from some of your speakers earlier today. It's already an area which people want to live in and where house prices are high and many young people struggle to get on the housing ladder. When I visit cities like Cambridge, young people there tell me that they may get themselves a fantastic job in the university or at Microsoft, brilliant businesses that to a previous generation would have almost guaranteed you a good home for you and your family in the city. Those people today say that they can't afford to live there. And we have to fix that problem because it's the right thing to do for the country, for those people, so that we can renew the dream of home ownership and help people to get on the housing ladder, but also because it's the right thing to do economically for our productivity and to ensure this area thrives in the future. We know that there's a huge potential to build new homes here in this area. At the last budget, we included a pioneering housing deal with Oxfordshire that will deliver 100,000 homes by 2031. And we want to work with more parts of this arc, more councils and communities, to see what requirements they have and how we at the Treasury can assist you to deliver those homes. We know that resources are finite for councils as they are for central government, but we also know that with creativity and flexibility, we may be able to pull levers and provide opportunities for you. And so my door at the Treasury is open to you if you'd like to come to discuss how we can together realize our ambition. We want to ensure that the communities that we create are vibrant, attractive places for people to live. We don't want to create new towns and villages that are purely commuter communities. We want to ensure that the economic opportunities that those of us, and myself included, too often describe as being purely in Oxford and Cambridge, are also spread out amongst the other towns and cities throughout the area. And we see ways of doing that. We're open to new models. We're interested, for example, in development corporations, in enterprise zones, in other opportunities that you feel would help to unlock the housing and the jobs alongside them so that people can lead the kind of lives that increasingly they want to lead, free from long commutes on public transport or on congested roads. So please continue to talk, of course, primarily to the Department for Housing, Communities and Local Government, but also feel that you have a voice with the Treasury, because we want to ensure that as we're investing in the infrastructure, we are delivering on the housing, because it's the right thing to do for the communities of this area, but also the right thing to do for the economy. And the third point I wanted to raise today is the piece of the puzzle in encouraging investment. The good news is that you represent and live in an area which is known throughout the world. When the Chancellor visited the Middle East recently, it was not a hard sell to persuade sovereign wealth funds and foreign governments that this was somewhere and this was a project worthy of investment. Everybody has heard of the communities that you represent and live in, and many, many people want to get on board this project. There is a great desire around the world for government-backed or endorsed infrastructure projects, and few more so than this one because of the people, the communities, the history that you represent. We've taken a personal interest in this at the Treasury. The Chancellor has raised it repeatedly, whether that has been on his trips to Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states, his visit to China in June, when he presented this opportunity to Chinese investors. They were all keen to invest. So we want to ensure that you know and have the resources that you will require to access and tap into that investment. We want to ensure that government is working for you and are interested in your feedback, to ensure that the Department for International Trade is supporting you, providing you with the materials and unlocking the doors that you need to win that investment. At the autumn budget, the government launched a 10-year action plan to unlock over £20 billion of finance growth for innovative firms to attract exactly the kind of businesses that already exist in this area, and we see more potential to do so. High potential businesses scaling up already and with great potential to do so in the future. We want to ensure that all of your communities have those opportunities and that we win inward investment where we need it. Because this area is, to us, Europe's greatest opportunity for inward investment, for research and development, for science and for entrepreneurship. If I can make a parting comment to you, it's that with so much going on, there is a need for us all to work together strategically, to communicate clearly with each other, to ensure that we maximize these opportunities and to deliver on this plan. It's great to see that a clear and purposeful structure is emerging. I know that local councils are working well together, which doesn't happen in all parts of the country. I think that's incredibly important. The Department for Communities and Local Government are working with local partners, some of whom are represented in this room, to shape a joint vision statement for the HUK, which we hope will be published in the coming weeks. This will emphasize a number of things that we're seeking to achieve. A long-term focus to 2050 and beyond that gives you and your communities the confidence to know that this is not going to be a project that loses currency as governments come and go, but one which will last for the long term, which will give businesses the confidence to invest, knowing that infrastructure decisions will be followed through on, and will give those inward investors, the sovereign wealth funds and infrastructure funds from around the world who we know are interested in this area, the confidence to invest. A multidisciplinary approach to economic development, housing and infrastructure. All of these areas must come together. And a strong partnership between government, local authorities, the universities, businesses large and small, and the local enterprise partnerships who must be the voice of business in this endeavour. We know that we'll only achieve the true potential of this project, whether that is in housing, in infrastructure, in entrepreneurship and economic development, if we work together. We're only limited by the scale of our ambition and our imagination and our ability to come together and to have the governance that we require to achieve it. That will require us to be willing to work together, for central government to be willing to give more power and responsibility to local communities, and for local communities sometimes to be willing to let go and work as a team. When we do that, we know we can achieve a great deal. And I'm working with other ministers in Whitehall to ensure that our side of the bargain is delivered on, that we work better together as a team, that ministers are meeting regularly from different departments, and that we are ensuring that the investments we make are joined up. But we also need to ensure that happens locally. So I hope that you will be willing to work, as you have been to date, very closely together, to think about new governance structures and methods of involving the voice of business at the heart of this, to give it the branding that it's required to elevate this, not just as something of importance to yourselves, but as a national project, alongside the Northern Powerhouse, the Midlands Engine, and other great national endeavours that we've done, whether that's the Olympics or others, that we view this as one of the great projects that our country is trying to achieve. And I think if we can do that together, work together as closely as possible, then we really can achieve something that will take 20 or 30 years, but which we can all be very proud of when we look back upon. So thank you very much for inviting me here today. It's a pleasure to be here on behalf of the Chancellor. And from our perspective at the Treasury, know this, that this is a project of national importance. We're putting the investment behind it. We view it as one that is for the long term, and we want to continue to work very closely with you in a shared endeavour to achieve something special for the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. Are you taking questions? Are you able to take any questions before you shoot off? A couple of questions. You mentioned the Northern Powerhouse and Midlands Engine. What does this ARC corridor? Have you got a name for it? You call it the ARC. What does this ARC or corridor have to do to make its voice heard above those other really important regions?
Well, I think we all have to give this the prominence that it deserves. It's yet to capture the public imagination on the scale that I think it warrants. So the task for us in government is to help you to give it a branding and identity that really captures the scale of the opportunity, for you to ensure that the voice of business, of the universities, of the entrepreneurs is heard in the process, and to bring it to life so that it's more than just a road and a railway and, unfortunately, possibly having some homes built in places that you might not always want them to be built, but for people to actually understand that it's also about raising people's living standards, about bringing really good quality jobs, not just to Oxford and Cambridge, which already have quite a lot of them, but to other communities that perhaps don't already. And that in doing so, we're doing something good for the whole country, which is giving this country the technology, the life sciences, the entrepreneurship hub that it really deserves, and which will be on a par with Silicon Valley, and others around the world.
Any appetite, do you think, for a national policy statement?
Well, I understand that there is interest and that that's being discussed, and I think that's something that we can take forward. The next step for us at the Treasury, I think, is in responding to the National Infrastructure Commission, as I said in my remarks, to do so fully, in a way which satisfies many of the questions that are outstanding, and in a way which doesn't just speak to the people in this room, but actually to everyone who lives in these communities, and tries to persuade them that they should come on this journey with us, and that it's worth the new roads, the new housing, because in doing so, they're going to live in an area where their children and grandchildren can get homes, where there'll be better quality jobs. They'll be living in an exciting place with entrepreneurship and new technologies and so on all around them.
Two quick questions, one here and one there. Far away, yeah.
Thank you. I'm Alex Plant from Anglian Water, but formerly of the Treasury. I'm also on the board of Cambridge Ahead and of the Centre for Cities. Great to hear your level of support for the ARC and the kind of recognition of the net additional gain that can be brought to the UK if it comes off over the long term. My question is really one around the extent to which the wherewithal can be given to partners at the local and regional level to deliver the kind of ambition you've talked about. Because for so many past endeavours in this sort of area, we get stuck at the point where the request for fiscal devolution hits a straight no from the Treasury. And all the time that there isn't the real fiscal devolution, such that an element of the kind of growth dividend that can come from a project like this is actually retained and able to be invested locally and under local control, I don't think you'll get to the kind of vision you were setting out.
Well, I think we agree to the extent that the vision is limited by our ability to work together and to form a structure, whatever that happens to be, one that works for you. The government's not going to impose something upon these communities that you don't want. But the stronger that is, the more coherent that is and well-led that is, the more likely it is to be able to persuade and have the credibility to take on the powers, responsibilities, and the money that would flow with it. So I would encourage those people who really want to see this project reach its full potential to be willing to think boldly about the levels of interaction and governance that you're willing to accept. And certainly when we deal with other parts of the country that have accepted high levels of common working, it is easier then to build credibility and substance behind it. So we don't intend to, it's not our view that we're going to invent a new structure and impose it upon you, but the deeper that partnership can be, the more likely it is that we'll be able to invest in you the powers and responsibilities that you really want.
Shen.
Hi, my name is Shen. I represent Chinese investors. Over the last 2 years, we've invested tens of millions in the corridor where we've assembled so far 1,100 acres of land, predominantly brownfield between Bedford and Central Beds. And we believe we probably have the largest or one of the largest landowners of developable land that could unlock a lot of housing at affordable rates as well as employment land. And my investors from China are thinking very strategically. One of the appeal of the Oxbridge Arc area is the technology and the brain power behind it. So parallel to investing in land and placemaking opportunities, we are also looking at, innovations and technology investment opportunities behind it. Working closely together, there is a lot more FDI. Here is a real case. There's a lot more FDI we could actually pull in from China. And we are definitely one of the largest from China doing so and the earliest in this area. So my question to you is, I'm very encouraged by your speech. Here is a real example. What support and help could we get from you, central government, to help us to take this forward?
Well, firstly, thank you very much for what you're doing and the investment that you're making in the area and in the country. We want to continue to support investors like yourselves to see this country as the technology heart of Europe. Our world-class universities like Oxford and Cambridge, their reputations speak for themselves, but this is a highly competitive market. That's why we've created the Modern Industrial Strategy, which is increasing the amount of money we're putting into science, to research and development. It's why at the Treasury we're investing more in infrastructure. This area will benefit from it. It's why we're committed to increasing and maintaining our tax environment with research and development tax credits, for example, keeping corporation tax very low, support for entrepreneurship in this country with entrepreneurship investment schemes and others, so that we have a world-class tax environment to boost entrepreneurship and investment in new technologies. We're taking forward a number of new technologies very seriously, whether that's autonomous vehicles, artificial intelligence, electric cars and others, with particular investments, many of which are occurring in this area. But if you'd like to speak to us, by all means, I'll give you my contact details, and very happy to meet up and hear what in particular we could do to support you.
Robert, as you said earlier, your door is open. Thank you very much for joining us here. I think we could probably ask you questions all afternoon, but I understand you've got another appointment. So thank you very much for bearing with us, for answering some questions. And next time you come, maybe we'll be doing electric cars out there. Yeah. And it won't be quite so noisy. So thanks for bearing with us. So round of applause to the Minister.
Thank you.